The Mafia king brought his mistress to Chicago's most exclusive gala, believing the wife he had discarded would be gone before midnight. Then the ballroom doors opened. Victoria Kane walked in wearing the Blackwood emerald with Cole Mercer beside her, the one man powerful men feared more than prison. In that instant, every whisper stopped, every smile vanished, and Dominic realized the quiet woman he had ignored for 7 years had never been powerless. Maybe you know that feeling, standing beside someone who benefits from your loyalty while slowly making you believe you are replaceable. But this is not only a story about betrayal. It is about the moment a woman remembers her name, reclaims her power, and forces an entire city to confront the truth. Watch until the end. Like the video and comment where you are watching from. 3 hours earlier, before the ballroom fell silent and Dominic Kane dropped his glass, Victoria stood barefoot in the penthouse they had shared for 7 years and listened to her husband end their marriage without looking at her. Rain streaked the windows above the Chicago River. Far below, headlights moved through the wet streets like veins of gold beneath black skin. The city looked cold, expensive, and unreachable. Dominic adjusted a silver cufflink in the reflection of the glass. "I want you out before midnight." Victoria remained beside the dining table, one hand resting against the back of a chair. For a moment she thought she had misunderstood him. Out of the gala, out of the penthouse. His voice carried no anger. That was the cruelest part. He spoke as though he were canceling a reservation or replacing a car that no longer suited him. Victoria looked at the untouched dinner between them. The candles had burned halfway down. The food had gone cold 20 minutes earlier while Dominic answered messages on his phone. She had chosen the wine herself. He had not noticed. "Is there someone else?" she asked. Dominic paused. The rain whispered against the windows. "Bianca Russo understands my world." Victoria felt something tighten beneath her ribs. She had seen Bianca twice. Once at a charity auction where the younger woman had watched Dominic with open interest. Once at a private dinner in Lake Forest where she had laughed too loudly at every sentence he spoke. Victoria had dismissed it then. Not because she trusted Bianca, because she wanted to trust her husband. "I have spent 7 years in your world," Victoria said. Dominic turned from the window. He wore a black tuxedo tailored so precisely that the fabric seemed to move with him. He looked composed, handsome, and entirely untouched by the life he was dismantling. "You survived in it," he said. "You never belonged in it." Victoria searched his face for hesitation. "There was none. I stood beside you at every fundraiser, every negotiation, every funeral, physically." The word landed quietly. It still struck harder than a slap. Dominic crossed the room and reached for the scotch decanter. He poured 2 fingers into a crystal glass, though he knew she hated when he drank before important events. "I need someone people notice." Victoria almost smiled. Not because anything was funny, because there were some wounds so precise the body did not know how to react. "I was your wife. You were good at being agreeable." He raised the glass and looked at her over the rim. That is not the same thing. For years she had believed patience was love in its most disciplined form. She had believed silence prevented unnecessary wars. She had believed if she gave Dominic enough room to become the man he wanted to be, he would eventually remember to make room for her. Instead, he had learned how little space she required. "When did you decide?" she asked. Dominic glanced at his watch. "My lawyers prepared the papers last week. You called lawyers before speaking to me." "I prepared." Victoria looked around the penthouse. Prepared. The word seemed to settle into every room, into the framed photographs chosen by his publicist, into the cream furniture he preferred, into the polished marble floors where she had learned to walk softly during late business meetings, into the dining room where Dominic had once promised they would fill the chairs with children, 7 years of marriage reduced to something he had prepared to remove. "Does Bianca know?" Victoria asked. "She knows enough." And tonight Dominic took another drink. "She will be accompanying me to the gala." The Founders Circle Gala was the most important social event in Chicago. Judges, senators, developers, police commissioners, bankers, union leaders, and men who controlled entire neighborhoods attended every year. Victoria had hosted planning dinners for months. She had chosen the floral arrangements. She had convinced 3 reluctant donors to attend. She had repaired a dispute between Dominic and the chairman after a negotiation turned personal. Now another woman would walk into that ballroom on his arm. "What did you tell people about me?" she asked. "That you were unwell?" Victoria nodded slowly. The lie was almost elegant. He would enter the ballroom with Bianca Russo while his quiet wife remained home too fragile to attend. By tomorrow, the city would understand the arrangement without anyone needing to say it aloud. "Of course," Victoria whispered. Dominic set down his glass. "You will receive a generous settlement." The numbness inside her cracked. "A settlement. You will be comfortable." She looked at him, then really looked at him. For years she had watched Dominic command rooms filled with dangerous men. He never raised his voice unless he wanted fear to linger after he left. He knew when to smile, when to threaten, when to make another person feel chosen. That talent had once fascinated her. Now she understood she had never been exempt from it. "You think comfort is what I wanted. I think simplicity suits you." He crossed toward the foyer. Victoria followed him with her eyes. At the door he stopped. For a fraction of a second she wondered whether he would turn around and apologize. Instead he said, "You are a good woman, Victoria. You will be happier with someone simpler." Then he left. The door closed behind him with a soft, expensive click. Victoria stood alone. She expected tears. None came. She expected rage. Instead there was only a vast and terrible stillness. The candles continued burning. Rain continued falling. Somewhere in the kitchen the refrigerator motor hummed. Her body seemed to understand before her mind did that nothing in the room would ever belong to her again. She walked through the penthouse slowly. In the hallway, 3 framed photographs showed Dominic shaking hands with governors, mayors, and men whose names appeared on hospital wings. Victoria was present in each picture, always half a step behind him. In the sitting room, a stack of charity invitations waited for her approval. One envelope spelled her name incorrectly. No one had corrected it. She entered the music room. The grand piano sat beneath a linen cover. She had played every day before she married Dominic. Chopin when she was restless. Rachmaninoff when she was angry. Gershwin when her father insisted she needed something American in her blood. Dominic had loved hearing her during the first year. By the third, he complained that music interrupted his calls. By the 5th, the piano remained covered. Victoria touched the edge of the linen. Dust clung to her fingertips. She continued into the library. Most of her books were gone. Dominic had replaced them with first editions selected by an interior designer. The shelves looked impressive and unread. Her father would have hated them. The thought arrived without warning. Arthur Blackwood had been dead for 7 years, but even now she could hear the rough impatience in his voice. "A house should reveal who lives inside it, Tori. Otherwise it is only an expensive coffin." She closed her eyes. She had not allowed herself to think of him in months, perhaps years. Thinking of Arthur always led to the life she had abandoned. The Blackwood name. The private schools where bodyguards waited outside classrooms. The summer estates where senators arrived through side entrances. The armed men who stood behind her father at dinner and never touched their plates. The warnings. The loyalty. The blood. Victoria had spent her childhood surrounded by power and her early adulthood running from it. Dominic had seemed different when they met. He was ambitious but not yet untouchable. Dangerous but still capable of tenderness. He spoke about building something legitimate. Something that would not require children to memorize escape routes before learning to drive. Victoria had believed him. More painfully, she had believed she could become ordinary beside him. She moved toward the old writing desk near the fireplace. It was the only piece of furniture from her father's home that Dominic had allowed her to keep. He hated the dark walnut and carved ravens. Victoria had kept it because he hated it. She ran her fingers beneath the 3rd drawer. There was a small brass latch hidden beneath the frame. She pressed it. A narrow compartment opened. Inside lay a black envelope. The wax seal remained unbroken. A raven circled a dagger. The Blackwood crest. Victoria stared at it. Her father had placed the envelope in her hand 3 days before her wedding. Use it only when pretending becomes more painful than remembering. At the time, she had accused him of trying to ruin her happiness. Arthur had said nothing. He had only kissed her forehead and walked away. Victoria broke the seal. Inside was a single card, One telephone number, 2 handwritten words. When ready. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone. The number connected before the second ring. No greeting, no name, only silence. Victoria could hear the faint sound of breathing on the other end. "Cole," she said. The man answered immediately. "Victoria." He did not sound surprised. That frightened her more than if he had. She sat at the desk. For 7 years she had avoided his name. Cole Mercer had been her father's most trusted man. He had taught her how to drive through a barricade, how to recognize a tail, how to fire a pistol without closing her eyes. He had also been the only person at Arthur's funeral who looked at Victoria as though he knew she was making a mistake. "You kept the number," Cole said. "Yes. Are you safe?" The question broke something inside her, not because she was in immediate danger, because no one had asked her that in years. "Yes." A pause. "Where is Dominic at the Founders Circle Gala?" Alone, Victoria looked toward the rain-darkened windows. "With Bianca Russo." Cole breathed out once. It was not surprise. It sounded closer to confirmation. "What do you need?" he asked. Victoria glanced at the black envelope, all the files. Silence stretched between them. "You know what happens when I bring them." "I know." "No. You know what your father told you. That is not the same thing as understanding." Victoria stood and walked toward the glass. Chicago spread beneath her. Dominic's city, his buildings, his people, his empire. At least that was what he believed. "I spent 7 years becoming someone he could leave without consequence," she said. "I understand enough." Cole's voice lowered. "Say it clearly." Victoria watched lightning flicker beyond the skyline. "I am ready." A chair scraped on the other end. "I will be there in 20 minutes." The line went dead. Victoria lowered the phone. For the first time that evening, she felt something other than numbness, not hope. Hope was too gentle. This was memory returning to the body. She walked into the dressing room. Dominic had filled her side of the closet with colors he considered appropriate. Ivory, gray, pale blue, soft fabrics that photographed well beside his black suits. At the rear stood 6 garment bags she had not opened since the wedding. She unzipped the first. Inside was a black silk gown. Her mother had ordered it from New York before illness reduced her to shadows and whispered instructions. The neckline was elegant. The back was cut low. The fabric fell with the weight of water. Victoria touched the silk and remembered her mother standing behind her at 19, fastening an emerald necklace around her throat. "Power is not noise, sweetheart. It is the reason noise stops when you enter." Victoria removed the silver dress she had planned to wear beside Dominic. She let it fall to the floor. The black gown fit as though 7 years had not passed. She pinned her hair away from her face, revealing the line of her neck and the sharpness Dominic had once praised before asking her to soften it. Then she opened the small safe beneath the shoe cabinet. Inside lay jewelry she had not worn since Arthur's funeral. Black diamond earrings, her mother's emerald ring, the Blackwood necklace. The emerald was deep green, nearly black at the center, held in an antique setting shaped like raven wings. Dominic had once asked why she never sold it. Victoria had told him it was a family piece with little market value. He had believed her. The necklace alone was worth more than the first building Dominic ever purchased. She fastened it around her neck. The woman in the mirror looked unfamiliar, not because she had changed, because she had returned. The private elevator chimed. Victoria left the dressing room. The doors opened. Cole Mercer stepped into the penthouse carrying a dark leather case. He was taller than she remembered. His black overcoat was wet at the shoulders. A scar ran from the edge of his jaw toward his left ear, pale against tanned skin. His hair was shorter than it had been at the funeral, but the years had hardened everything else. He looked at her without speaking. The feared man disappeared for a moment. In his place stood the person who had once bandaged her palm after she broke a glass during an argument with Arthur. "You look like yourself again," he said. Victoria tried to answer. Her voice failed. Cole placed the case on the kitchen island. He did not reach for her. He had always understood that restraint could be a form of loyalty. "I do not know who that is anymore," she said. "Then start here." He opened the case. Documents filled the interior in precise sections. Trust agreements, corporate records, property maps, banking guarantees, Photographs, encrypted drives. Victoria removed the first folder. Kane Consolidated appeared at the center of a complicated ownership chart. Lines connected the company to investment firms in Delaware, holding entities in Nevada, private funds in New York, and financial vehicles based overseas. At the edge of the chart, one name appeared repeatedly: Blackwood Family Trust. Victoria scanned the percentages. Her eyes stopped. 45%. Cole nodded. She looked at him. Of the company of Kane Consolidated and its principal subsidiaries. That is impossible. It is documented. Victoria turned through the pages. The evidence was everywhere. Dominic's construction acquisitions, his riverfront development, the casino expansion, the hotel portfolio. Every major move had been supported by capital linked to the Blackwood Trust. He told me the company began with private lenders. It did. Cole pointed to 3 entities. They belonged to your father. Victoria felt the room tilt. Dominic never said anything. Dominic said what benefited Dominic. Did he know? He knew Blackwood money opened the first doors. He may not know how much remained behind them. Victoria looked at the ownership chart again. For years, magazines had called Dominic self-made. She had watched him accept awards for creating an empire from nothing. She had stood in the audience and applauded. He built everything on my family's money. Cole's expression remained calm. He built the tower. He touched the document. Your family owned the ground beneath it. Victoria placed both hands on the counter. Anger arrived slowly. It began in her chest and moved outward, warming her skin. Why did my father do this? He believed Dominic could expand the legitimate side of the Blackwood assets. And me, Cole, looked at her carefully. You were never collateral. That is not what it feels like. No. His answer was immediate. It feels like everyone made decisions around you and called it protection. Victoria met his eyes. Cole had always been dangerous because he told the truth without decorating it. She turned away. Why did you never come for me? You asked me not to. I was grieving. You were certain. I was wrong. Cole's jaw tightened. That did not give me the right to take your choice away. Victoria remembered the cemetery. Cold rain, black umbrellas. Dominic speaking quietly on the phone beside her father's grave. Cole, standing several feet away, soaked through waiting until the last mourner left. He had asked what she needed. She had said, "Watch me. Protect me. Stay far enough away that I can pretend this life is mine." He had obeyed. For 7 years. You watched him erase me, Victoria said. I watched you choose him. The words were not cruel. That made them worse. Cole stepped closer, though he still did not touch her. And I waited for you to choose yourself. Victoria looked down at the files. The clock above the kitchen showed 8:46. The gala had begun. Dominic would be moving through the ballroom with Bianca beside him. He would be accepting congratulations from men whose money rested on foundations her family had created. He would be telling anyone who asked that his wife was unwell. Victoria closed the folder. Take me to the Ashcroft. Cole studied her face. You understand what walking in beside me means. The city will know the Blackwoods are active again. They will assume you intend to claim everything. I do. They will assume I am more than security. Victoria lifted her eyes to his. Does that concern you, no? The answer came too quickly. A faint tension moved between them. Cole closed the leather case. It may concern you. Victoria picked up her clutch. Let them believe whatever frightens them most. Cole looked at her for one long second. Then he took the case and followed her toward the elevator. As the doors closed, Victoria saw the penthouse for the last time as Dominic's wife. The pale rooms, the covered piano, the cold dinner, the silver dress on the floor. She felt no desire to return for any of it. The elevator descended. Cole stood beside her in silence. When the doors opened into the private garage, a black Cadillac waited with its engine running. Cole placed the files in the trunk and opened the passenger door for her. Victoria paused before getting in. Did you know about Bianca? Cole did not lie. Yes. For how long? 4 months. She absorbed the answer. And you said nothing. You ordered me to stay out of your marriage unless your life was in danger. My life was in danger, not the part of it you meant. Victoria looked toward the concrete ceiling. Pain moved through her, quiet and sharp. Cole's voice softened. I am sorry. She turned toward him. It was the first apology she had heard that night. She entered the car. Chicago passed outside in streaks of rain and neon. Neither of them spoke for several blocks. Then Cole asked, "What do you want from him?" Victoria watched the city move beyond the glass. "I want him to understand what he threw away. That is Payne speaking. He caused it. Yes." Cole turned onto Michigan Avenue. "But Payne does not know when it has been fed enough." Victoria looked at him. "What would you suggest? Take what is yours, leave him with what is his. And if nothing is his," Cole's mouth curved slightly, "then the evening may be shorter than I expected." For the first time, Victoria laughed. The sound surprised her. It was small and rough from disuse, but it was real. Cole glanced at her. "There you are." The Ashcroft Grand Hotel appeared ahead, glowing above the rain-soaked street. Black cars lined the entrance. Photographers crowded beneath the awning. Guests climbed the marble steps beneath umbrellas held by attendants. Victoria's heartbeat began to rise. Cole pulled into a private access lane and stopped beneath a side canopy. He turned off the engine. "Once you step inside, Dominic will not be the only person watching you. I know. Some of them knew your father. I know. Some of them feared him." Victoria placed one hand on the door. They should have remembered his daughter. Cole exited and came around the car. He offered his hand. Victoria looked at it. The last time she had taken Cole Mercer's hand, she had been 25 years old and standing beside her father's grave. She had released it to marry Dominic Kane. Now she placed her fingers in his. Cole helped her from the car. Rain misted the air beyond the canopy. Music drifted faintly through the hotel walls. Victoria straightened the Blackwood emerald at her throat. Cole lifted the leather case. Together they crossed the marble lobby. The ballroom doors stood ahead, guarded by two men in dark suits. One recognized Cole. His face changed. He stepped aside without asking for an invitation. The orchestra reached the final notes of a Vivaldi movement. Cole looked at Victoria. "Ready." She heard Dominic's voice in her memory. "You never belonged in my world." Victoria placed her hand against the ballroom door. "No," she said quietly, "but I belong in mine." The doors opened. Warm light spilled across Victoria's face. The orchestra finished its final note, but the silence that followed did not feel like part of the music. It moved through the ballroom in waves. A conversation near the champagne tower stopped first, then another beside the auction display. Heads turned one by one until nearly 500 people were looking toward the entrance. Victoria felt Cole's hand leave hers. Not because he was withdrawing, because he understood she had to cross the room under her own power. The Ashcroft ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers. White roses covered the tables. Gold light reflected across polished marble. Along the walls hung portraits of Chicago industrialists, railroad barons, judges, and benefactors whose families had shaped the city with money influence and carefully buried crimes. At the center of the room stood Dominic Kane. Bianca Russo rested one hand against his arm. Her dress was red sharp against the black tuxedo surrounding her. She had chosen the color to be seen. Her dark hair fell over one shoulder and diamonds flashed at her throat each time she moved. Dominic still held the broken stem of his glass. Scotch darkened the marble near his shoes. For the first time in 7 years, Victoria watched him lose control of a room. Bianca looked from Victoria to Cole. "Who is that?" Dominic did not answer. His eyes had fixed on the emerald at Victoria's throat. Recognition came slowly then, all at once. The Blackwood necklace was not famous in the ordinary sense. It did not appear in magazines. It had never been auctioned. It was remembered by the kind of people who understood that the most valuable things were often the least displayed. An older man near the front whispered the Blackwood name. Another guest repeated it. By the time Victoria took her fourth step into the ballroom, the name had begun spreading through the crowd. Blackwood, Blackwood, Blackwood. Cole walked beside her, half a pace behind. He did not scan the room nervously. He measured it. Security exits, cameras, private guards, men reaching for phones, men pretending not to. Several of the older guests recognized him. A union broker near the bar lowered his drink. A retired judge went pale. One of Dominic's security men turned toward Cole, then thought better of approaching. Victoria kept walking. The sound of her heels against the marble marked every step. Dominic recovered first. He set the broken glass on a passing tray and forced a smile. Victoria. His voice carried farther than he intended. She stopped 3 feet away. For 7 years she had stood beside him at public events and waited for him to introduce her. Tonight, she needed no introduction. Her gaze moved to Bianca. Up close, the younger woman's confidence looked carefully constructed. Her lipstick was perfect. Her shoulders were straight, yet her fingers tightened around Dominic's sleeve. "I was told you were unwell," Bianca said. Victoria looked at Dominic. "I recovered." A few people laughed softly. Dominic's jaw tightened. "You should not be here." Victoria glanced around the ballroom. "I helped plan the event. That does not answer me." "No," she said, "it answers everyone else." Bianca released Dominic's arm. The movement was small, but Victoria noticed. So did Dominic. He lowered his voice. "You were supposed to leave the penthouse." "I did." "Then why are you here?" Victoria smiled. "You never said anything about leaving the city." Another murmur passed through the guests nearest them. Dominic looked toward Cole. What is he doing here? Cole's expression did not change. Victoria answered for him. "He brought me." Dominic took 1 step closer. "You call Mercer after 7 years, and suddenly you think you understand what you are walking into." Victoria met his eyes. "I understand enough to know you preferred me when I did not ask questions." Bianca looked between them. "Dominic, what is she talking about?" He ignored her. His attention remained fixed on Victoria. "You are making a mistake." "No." She reached for the leather case Cole carried. "I made the mistake 7 years ago." Cole handed it to her. The clasp opened with a quiet click. The sound seemed louder than it should have been. Dominic's eyes dropped to the documents inside. For the first time that night, fear entered his face. It did not remain long. He covered it with anger. "Put that away." Victoria removed a folder embossed with the Blackwood crest. "Why this is not the place. You chose the place." His voice sharpened. "Victoria, Dominic." She said his name the way he always said hers when he wanted obedience. Something cold moved behind his eyes. The crowd tightened around them without appearing to. People leaned closer. Servers slowed as they passed. Phones appeared near silk gowns and dinner jackets. Victoria opened the folder. "You brought your mistress to a gala financed by my family." Bianca's face hardened. "I am not his mistress." Victoria turned toward her. "Then he lied to both of us." Bianca looked at Dominic. He said nothing. That silence answered more than any confession could have. Victoria faced the room. "Many of you have invested in Kane Consolidated. Some of you sit on its board, some extended credit, some approved development rights. Most of you were told the company was built through private capital and Dominic Kane's vision." Dominic stepped beside her. "You do not know what those documents mean." Victoria lifted the first page. "I know exactly what they mean." She handed it to a man standing near the front. Ethan Caldwell, Chief Financial Officer of Kane Consolidated, stared at her before looking down at the page. Dominic's voice became controlled again. "Ethan." The warning in his tone was clear. Ethan swallowed. He had worked for Dominic for 11 years. He knew what happened to employees who embarrassed him. He also knew what happened to executives who lied in front of witnesses. Victoria asked, "Is that your signature?" Ethan examined the bottom of the document. "Yes." "Is the ownership structure accurate?" Dominic moved toward him. "Do not answer that." Victoria did not raise her voice. He already did. Ethan looked around the ballroom. Every face seemed turned toward him. He drew a slow breath. "The structure appears accurate." Bianca stared at Dominic. "What structure?" Victoria answered. "The Blackwood Family Trust controls 45% of Kane Consolidated and its principal subsidiaries." The words struck the room like a gunshot. Someone near the auction tables whispered, 45. A banker immediately reached for his phone. 2 board members exchanged a look. Dominic laughed once. It was too hard to sound convincing. "This is absurd." Victoria removed another document. "Would you like the guarantees tied to the River North development?" She placed it on the table beside them. "Or the private loans used to acquire the hotel portfolio?" Another page. "The casino expansion." Another. "The construction fund." Another. With each document, Dominic's face changed. Not dramatically. A tightening at the mouth, a pulse in his temple, the slightest shift in his breathing. Victoria knew every sign. She had spent 7 years studying him in silence. He leaned closer. You have no idea who these entities belong to. Then explain them. Dominic looked at the papers. Victoria waited. The ballroom waited with her. He did not answer. She turned to Ethan. Who owns Blackridge Capital? Ethan hesitated. Answer her, a voice said from the crowd. Malcolm Shaw stepped forward. The old financier wore a midnight blue tuxedo and carried a silver-tipped cane he did not need. His white hair was combed back from a narrow face. He had attended Arthur Blackwood's funeral and kissed Victoria's cheek before disappearing into the rain. She had not seen him since. Malcolm took the document from Ethan. Blackridge Capital was created under Arthur Blackwood's direction. The room shifted again. Dominic looked at Malcolm with open fury. Victoria noticed it. She mistook it for humiliation. Malcolm continued. The fund supported several early Kane acquisitions. Victoria asked, did Dominic know Malcolm studied her? He knew the capital had Blackwood origins. A pulse beat in Victoria's throat. Dominic had known, perhaps not everything, but enough. You told me my family's money was gone, she said. Dominic's expression hardened. It was tied up. You told me there was nothing left. You wanted nothing to do with it. That was not permission to lie. Dominic stepped closer. I built Kane Consolidated. Victoria held his gaze. With money you concealed from me. I multiplied it. You hid it. I protected it. From whom his silence answered again. Victoria felt the pain beneath her anger, but she did not let it show. She remembered sitting beside Dominic during their 2nd year of marriage, listening as he explained that her father's remaining assets had dissolved under legal pressure. She remembered feeling guilty that Arthur had died, leaving nothing stable. She remembered thanking Dominic for paying the remaining estate costs. Now she understood. He had used the Blackwood money to build his empire while allowing her to believe her inheritance had vanished. You let me think my father failed, she said. Dominic lowered his voice. Your father understood business. My father understood betrayal, too. Malcolm gave a quiet nod. Arthur was many things. Careless was not one of them. Dominic turned toward him. Stay out of this. Malcolm smiled faintly. My name is already in it. Victoria noticed several guests moving closer to Malcolm now. The old man carried legitimacy in rooms like this. He had advised banks negotiated union settlements and served on boards no journalist could fully explain. His support made Victoria's claim feel real. He raised his glass toward her, to the woman who finally remembered her name. Some guests lifted their glasses. Not all. Enough. The gesture spread. Victoria felt the room changing around her. Only hours earlier she had been the discarded wife hidden behind an excuse. Now men who had ignored her were studying her as an equal. Dominic saw it too. His hand closed into a fist. Cole stepped forward when Dominic moved closer. The shift was almost invisible, yet every man near them noticed. Dominic looked at him. You think standing beside my wife makes you powerful? Cole answered quietly. No. He glanced at Victoria. Standing beside her makes me loyal. Dominic's mouth twisted. You were always good at confusing loyalty with obsession. Cole's eyes went cold. You were always good at confusing possession with love. Bianca moved away from Dominic. This time she did not hide it. Dominic noticed. His anger sharpened. You have no place in my marriage. Cole took one slow step forward. You ended your marriage 3 hours ago. The words landed in front of half the city. Bianca's head turned toward Dominic. You told her tonight Dominic did not look at her. Victoria almost felt sorry for Bianca. Almost. Cole continued. You sent her home while you brought another woman here to replace her publicly. Dominic pointed toward the ballroom entrance. Walk away. Cole's face remained calm. No. The simplicity of the answer carried more threat than shouting could have. Dominic moved closer until only a foot remained between them. I know Victoria better than you ever will. Cole did not blink. What was her mother's name? Dominic paused. A tiny pause, but everyone saw it. Cole asked, What did Victoria study before she met you? Dominic's eyes flicked toward her. What was the first piece she learned on the piano? Victoria felt her breath catch. Cole continued, What does she do when she is frightened? Dominic's jaw flexed. Cole's voice lowered. You lived beside a woman for 7 years and never learned the difference between her silence and her surrender. The room went still again. Victoria looked at Cole. He did not turn toward her. He had said the words to Dominic, but they belonged to her. Dominic stepped back. He looked at Victoria as though seeing her for the first time and resenting what he saw. This performance changes nothing, he said. You cannot simply walk in and claim half a company. Not half. Victoria closed the folder. 45%. A few people smiled. Dominic did not. She removed a second document. This is notice of my intention to separate the trust interest from Kane Consolidated. Ethan took the paper and scanned it. Dominic looked at him. Tell her she cannot. Ethan hesitated. The agreement allows a separation request. A request, Dominic said, not a transfer. Victoria nodded. That is why the board will vote. Dominic laughed. You think the board will turn against me? Victoria looked around the room. 4 board members stood nearby. None met Dominic's eyes. The board serves the company, she said. Not your pride. You planned this. No. She reached into her clutch. I prepared. She let his own words sit between them. Dominic looked at the flash drive in her hand. His expression changed again. This time only she saw it. What is that? He asked. Victoria held it between 2 fingers. Records of what cash payments, shell companies, bribes, tax violations, private communications with city officials, audio recordings from meetings you thought I did not understand. Dominic stared at her. Bianca took another step away. Victoria continued. For 7 years you conducted business in rooms where I sat quietly beside you. She slipped the drive back into her clutch. You assumed quiet meant absent. Dominic lowered his voice. You would destroy everything. No. She stepped closer. I am giving you terms. His eyes narrowed. Terms. You release my interest without obstruction. You do not smear me publicly. You do not interfere with the separation. You do not move against Cole. The evidence remains private. Dominic smiled without warmth. You call that negotiation, I call it mercy. You are threatening me. I am giving you a choice. That is blackmail. Victoria held his gaze. Blackmail is demanding something that does not belong to you. She looked toward the documents spread across the table. I am only taking what is mine. Dominic's face became unreadable. For one dangerous second, Victoria thought he might strike her. Cole thought the same. He moved closer. Dominic saw him and stopped. Victoria turned away first. It was the most complete dismissal she had ever given him. The room opened around her. People who had spent years looking through her now stepped forward. A venture capital partner introduced himself. A board member asked for a private meeting the following morning. A union representative touched 2 fingers to his forehead in a gesture of respect once used for Arthur. Questions came quickly. Victoria answered some and ignored others. She did not rush. She let the room approach her. Across the ballroom, Dominic stood near the bar. Bianca was no longer beside him. Victoria watched her move toward a group of women near the dance floor, creating distance before the photographers understood what had happened. Dominic picked up another glass of scotch. His hand was bleeding. He had cut his palm on the broken stem. No one offered him a napkin. Malcolm approached Victoria again. You handled that better than your father would have, he said. Arthur would have overturned the table. Victoria allowed a small smile. Yes. He would have been proud. The words warmed something inside her. Malcolm placed one hand over hers. His skin felt dry and cold. You should call me tomorrow. There are details about the trust you need to understand. Victoria nodded. I will. For a moment, Malcolm's eyes moved past her toward Dominic. Something passed between the 2 men. It was too brief to define. Dominic looked away first. Victoria noticed, but the room demanded her attention again. By the time she turned back, Malcolm had disappeared into the crowd. An hour later, Victoria stepped onto the balcony for air. The rain had stopped. Chicago stretched beneath her, wet and luminous. The river cut through the city like dark glass. Wind moved across her shoulders, cooling the heat beneath her skin. The ballroom noise faded behind the closed doors. Cole joined her carrying a glass of water. She accepted it. You remembered. You have not eaten. I meant the water. Cole leaned against the stone railing. You always drink water after you are angry. Victoria looked at him. How do you know that I paid attention? The answer carried no accusation. That made it more intimate. She took a slow drink. Inside the orchestra began another piece. Victoria listened for a moment. "Gershwin," she said. Cole nodded. "You used to play it badly." She turned toward him. "I played it beautifully. You played it too fast. My father liked it fast. Your father liked everything fast, except decisions." Victoria smiled. The city felt different from the balcony. Not smaller. Possible. "Did I make a mistake tonight?" she asked. Cole studied her. "You want the honest answer always. You let anger choose the timing." Victoria looked back through the glass doors. Dominic stood alone near the bar. "But the decision was yours," Cole continued. "That matters." She turned toward him. "Why did you wait?" Cole's expression changed. The question had been between them since the penthouse, perhaps since the cemetery. "Because you asked me to. That is not the whole answer. No." The wind moved a loose strand of hair across Victoria's cheek. Cole reached toward it, then stopped before touching her. His hand fell. "I waited because I loved you." Victoria did not move. Inside the ballroom, people laughed. A camera flashed. The city continued beneath them as though nothing had happened. Cole looked toward the skyline. "I loved you before Dominic. I loved you after you chose him. I loved you enough not to make your grief another opportunity for a man to claim you." Victoria's throat tightened. "You never said anything. You needed freedom more than a confession. And now you asked." She looked at him. There was no demand in his face, no expectation. That frightened her in a different way. Dominic's love had always come with terms she did not understand until they had already shaped her. Cole stood beside her and asked for nothing. Victoria moved one step closer. The distance between them narrowed. Her phone vibrated inside her clutch. The moment broke. She looked down. A message from Malcolm Shaw appeared on the screen. "Your father would be proud." Victoria read it twice. Then she looked through the glass doors toward the ballroom. Malcolm stood near one of Dominic's attorneys. They were speaking quietly. Dominic had turned his back to them, but his shoulders were rigid. Cole followed her gaze. His expression sharpened. "What is it?" Victoria asked. "Nothing yet." She looked at him. Cole kept watching the two men. Malcolm placed a hand on the attorney's shoulder. The gesture appeared friendly. The attorney nodded and slipped a folded paper into his inside pocket. Victoria's phone remained warm in her hand. "Your father would be proud." The words no longer felt comforting. Cole opened the balcony door. "Come inside." Victoria did not ask why. She followed him back into the light. The ballroom swallowed them again. Music, laughter, and the clink of crystal returned around Victoria, but the room no longer felt triumphant. The lights seemed brighter than before. Every smile carried calculation. Every hand extended toward her seemed to ask what her name might be worth by morning. Cole remained close as they crossed the floor. "Do you know Dominic's attorney?" he asked. "Charles Bennett. He handles corporate disputes and anything Dominic wants buried." "What about Malcolm?" "My father trusted him. That was not my question." Victoria looked across the room. Malcolm Shaw had moved away from Charles Bennett. He now stood beside a group of bankers, smiling as though he had done nothing more dangerous than discuss the weather. "No," she said. "I do not know him anymore." Cole watched Malcolm for another second. "Then do not trust the version you remember." Victoria slipped her phone back into her clutch. Dominic stood near the far side of the ballroom, surrounded by board members who had suddenly discovered reasons to avoid his eyes. Blood still marked his palm. A server had placed a white towel beside him, but he had not used it. He was watching Victoria. There was no confusion in his face now, only patience. That unsettled her more than his anger had. Dominic had spent years controlling rooms by understanding what every person wanted. He knew when fear would silence a rival. He knew when praise would soften a banker. He knew when a small humiliation would keep an employee obedient for months. Yet he had just watched half the city question his authority, and he looked almost calm. Victoria turned toward Cole. "You think he expected me? I think he recovered too quickly. He dropped a glass. Dominic likes theater when it serves him." That was not theater. Cole's gaze remained on Dominic. "No, but everything after it may have been." Victoria felt the first chill beneath her skin. She opened her clutch and touched the flash drive. The evidence was still there. The ownership documents were real. Ethan had confirmed them. Malcolm had supported her in front of witnesses. She had not imagined the room shifting toward her. She had not imagined Dominic losing control. Still, the moment no longer felt clean. A woman from the Gala committee approached Victoria and offered congratulations with a nervous smile. Victoria answered politely. A developer asked whether she planned to attend the board meeting the following week. She gave him no promise. All the while, Cole watched the doors. Dominic watched her. Malcolm watched everyone. At 11:30, Victoria left the Ashcroft through a private exit. No photographers waited there. Cole had arranged the route before they entered. The Cadillac moved through wet streets toward the penthouse. Chicago shimmered under the final traces of rain. Water ran along the gutters. Traffic lights changed for empty intersections. Victoria sat with the leather case on her lap. The documents inside felt heavier than before. Cole drove in silence until they crossed the river. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I won. You do not believe that." "I believe something happened in that ballroom." "Yes, I stood in front of Dominic and told the truth. You told part of the truth." She looked at him. "What part did I miss? The part Malcolm wants you to find tomorrow." Victoria looked down at the case. "My father trusted him. Your father trusted Dominic, too." The words cut through her defense. Cole kept his eyes on the road. "Trust is not inherited, Victoria." She said nothing. By midnight, they were back inside the penthouse. The candles had burned out. The dinner remained on the table. The silver dress still lay on the dressing room floor where Victoria had left it. Nothing had moved. Yet the apartment felt different. Dominic's presence was everywhere, but his authority had vanished from the walls. Victoria removed the Blackwood necklace and placed it on the kitchen island beside the files. Without the emerald at her throat, she felt strangely exposed. Cole opened the first folder again. "We start from the beginning." Victoria loosened her hair. "It is after midnight. Paper does not become honest in the morning." He spread the corporate charts across the counter. Victoria poured water into 2 glasses. Together they examined every page. They traced holding companies through Delaware and Nevada. They reviewed loan guarantees signed before Victoria married Dominic. They found references to trust committees, voting rights, distribution limits, and administrative powers. The more Victoria read, the less certain the structure became. The Blackwood Trust controlled 45% of Kane Consolidated. That much was clear. What remained unclear was who controlled the trust. Victoria turned to a page covered in legal language. "This says the principal beneficiary has economic rights." Cole leaned closer. "Economic rights are not the same as voting authority." "I know." "Do you?" She looked at him sharply. Cole did not retreat. "Tonight you told a roomful of witnesses that you would separate the trust interest from the company. The agreement allows a separation request." "A request. That is what I said. You also said you were taking what belonged to you. It does belong to me." Cole rested both hands on the counter. "Morally, perhaps. Financially, probably. Legally, we do not know yet." Victoria looked back at the page. The language seemed designed to hide meaning behind repetition. Trustee discretion, beneficial interest, administrative control, contingent authority. She remembered Malcolm raising his glass. To the woman who finally remembered her name. The praise now felt less like support and more like permission. At 1:20, Cole called Daniel Price, a former trust attorney who had worked with Arthur Blackwood. Daniel answered from New York with a tired voice and no patience. Cole sent him copies of the agreements through an encrypted connection. Victoria listened as pages turned on the other end. After 10 minutes, Daniel said, "Where did she get these Arthur's archive?" Cole answered, "Are they complete? We do not know. That means no." Victoria stepped closer to the phone. "What am I missing?" Daniel went quiet. "Victoria." "Yes, I'm sorry about your father. He has been dead 7 years. Some apologies arrived late." She glanced at Cole. "What am I missing?" Daniel exhaled. The trust was written in layers. Your father revised it at least 4 times. These documents show your beneficial interest and the ownership position in Kane Consolidated. They do not show final trustee authority. Who has that authority? I need the schedules. Where are they? If Arthur kept them separate, he had a reason. Victoria pressed her fingertips against the counter. Can I separate the company shares not based on what I am looking at? Her stomach tightened. But the agreement says I can request separation. You can request many things. Can the trustees refuse? Yes. Can they freeze the trust? Another pause. Yes. Cole's expression changed. Victoria heard it in Daniel's silence before the attorney spoke again. If they believe a beneficiary is attempting to misuse trust assets, they can petition for emergency control. Misuse unauthorized transfers, false ownership claims, actions that threaten the value of the trust. Victoria looked toward the dark windows. What if the beneficiary publicly claimed the assets? Daniel's voice became careful. What exactly did you say tonight? Before she could answer, her phone rang. The sound cut through the penthouse. The screen showed Robert Hayes, her personal attorney. Victoria answered. Robert, where are you at home? Is anyone with you, Cole Mercer? Robert breathed out. All right, put me on speaker. Victoria placed the phone on the counter. Cole ended the call with Daniel. Robert's voice filled the kitchen. The Blackwood Family Trust has been frozen under an emergency petition. Victoria did not move. What the order was entered 20 minutes ago. Who filed it? I assumed Dominic. He joined the petition. Robert hesitated. The principal filing came from Malcolm Shaw. The room became very still. Victoria stared at the phone. No. I have the documents in front of me. Malcolm supported me tonight. I know. He confirmed the ownership structure, I know. He told the room my father created the funds. I know, Victoria. Her voice sharpened. Then why would he freeze the trust? Because every statement you made in that ballroom may now be presented as evidence that you intended to exercise authority you did not legally possess. Victoria looked at the ownership chart spread across the counter. The words began losing shape. Robert continued. The petition states that you attempted to claim direct control over trust assets. It also states that you threatened corporate officers with confidential information unless they allowed an unauthorized separation. I offered Dominic terms. They are calling it coercion. He has been hiding my inheritance. That may be true. Maybe truth and proof are not the same thing. Cole leaned toward the phone. Who signed the emergency request? Malcolm Shaw and Marcus Bellamy. Victoria frowned. Who is Marcus Bellamy? An alternate trustee appointed after Arthur died. I have never heard that name. You were not required to approve trustee appointments. The humiliation struck deeper than anything Dominic had said that evening. Her father's trust, her family's money, her name, yet strangers controlled the doors. What does the order do? Victoria asked. It freezes, transfers, distributions, voting changes, and asset separation. It also authorizes an independent review of your financial activity. I have done nothing. Robert did not answer immediately. Victoria, there is more. Cole's attention sharpened. Say it, he said. Robert continued. The petition includes records of attempted offshore transfers linked to accounts in your name. Victoria stared at Cole. I do not have offshore accounts. They have documents, forged documents, perhaps. Robert, I believe you. That is not the issue. What is the issue? The issue is that the records appear authentic. Victoria closed her eyes. A dull pressure formed behind them. Robert told her not to contact Dominic or Malcolm. He advised her not to move money, destroy records, or speak to anyone from Kane Consolidated. Then he added one final warning. Federal authorities may contact you for what the petition alleges possible fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Victoria opened her eyes. The penthouse seemed too quiet. Conspiracy, with whom Robert's answer came softly. Cole. The call ended at 4:17 in the morning. Victoria remained beside the kitchen island. Outside, Chicago had gone nearly black. Only the bridges and upper floors of office towers remained lit. Cole gathered the documents into careful stacks. She watched him for several seconds. You knew something was wrong, I suspected. You did not stop me. You would not have listened. You could have tried. I did. She remembered the balcony. You let anger choose the timing. Victoria turned away. He wanted witnesses. Yes, Malcolm wanted everyone to hear me claim the trust. Yes, he confirmed the documents because he needed my confidence. Cole looked at her. He needed you to believe the room had accepted your authority. She wrapped both arms around herself. I walked into that ballroom carrying their evidence. You carried real documents and made false conclusions. Conclusions they encouraged. She laughed once without humor. Dominic told me I did not understand his world. Cole's voice hardened. Do not give him credit for a trap he could not build alone. Victoria looked at the message still visible on her phone. Your father would be proud. Malcolm had sent it while speaking to Dominic's attorney. The cruelty of it settled slowly. He let me believe I won. Cole stepped closer. He needed you confident enough to speak without caution. I did exactly what they wanted. You did what anyone would have done after discovering 7 years of lies. No. She turned toward him. My father would not have done it. Your father was not betrayed by his husband 3 hours before walking into the room. My father would have read every page. Yes, he would have known the difference between ownership and control. Yes, he would have waited. Cole's expression softened. Arthur made mistakes too, not like this. You remember him as a monument because he died before you had the chance to see him become ordinary. Victoria looked away. The words hurt because they carried truth. Arthur Blackwood had taught patience, but he had also built the structure now being used against her. He had trusted Dominic. He had trusted Malcolm. He had hidden decisions from his daughter and called it protection. Perhaps everyone around her had mistaken secrecy for love. At 6 in the morning, the first legal notice arrived by email, then another, then 6 more. A preservation order demanded access to Victoria's devices. A federal inquiry requested a voluntary interview. A financial institution informed her that 3 accounts had been restricted. Kane Consolidated issued a private notice to its board stating that Victoria's claims at the Gala were under investigation. At 6:40, the first news alert appeared. Heiress claims control of Kane Empire during Gala confrontation. At 7:10, the headline changed. Questions surround Victoria Kane's claim to Blackwood assets. At 7:30, another outlet published photographs of Victoria holding the documents. Dominic stood behind her in every image, calm, watching. By 8, reporters had gathered outside the building. Victoria stood at the window and watched satellite trucks line the street. Her phone vibrated continuously. Some messages offered support. Most asked for comment. One came from Bianca Russo. I did not know he had told you that night. Victoria read it once and deleted it. Cole emerged from the study carrying a laptop. Malcolm and Dominic closed a real estate acquisition together 3 months ago, Victoria turned. What acquisition? $2 billion in property across Illinois and Wisconsin. The companies are hidden behind separate funds, but both men signed guarantee documents. They were partners. They still are. So the argument at the Gala was staged. Not all of it. Enough. Cole placed the laptop on the table. Photographs showed Malcolm entering Dominic's office on 3 different dates. Another image showed Charles Bennett leaving Malcolm's Lake Forest estate. Victoria studied them. How long have you had these 20 minutes? You still have people watching them. I never stopped. She looked at him. You obeyed my order to stay away, but you kept surveillance on my husband. I watched threats around you. Dominic was the threat. I know that now. Victoria turned toward the city. No, you knew it then. Cole did not answer. She faced him. You knew about Bianca. You knew Dominic had contact with Malcolm. You knew my father's money was inside his company. I knew pieces, and you decided which pieces I could survive. His jaw tightened. That is not what happened. It is exactly what happened. I respected your choice. You respected it so completely that you let me live inside a lie. Cole stepped closer. You asked me to protect your life, not control it. You could have told me. And if I had, I would have known. You would have defended him. Victoria opened her mouth. No words came. Cole's voice lowered. You would have said I hated him. You would have said I wanted to turn you against your husband. You would have closed the door and changed the number. She looked away because she knew he was right. I waited for evidence strong enough that you could see it without believing I had placed it there. And tonight, you called me. Victoria pressed her palms against the cool glass. I called you too late? No. She looked at him. Cole's face carried no pity. You called when you were ready. The distinction should have comforted her. It did not. At 9:15, federal agents arrived at the building. They did not come upstairs. They delivered a formal request through Robert Hayes for Victoria to appear at the federal offices downtown the following morning. Cole read the document twice. They are moving too quickly. Malcolm prepared this. For months, perhaps years. Victoria sat at the dining table. The cold plates from the previous night had been removed, but a faint ring of wax remained where the candles had burned. She placed the federal notice beside it. How long would it take to build financial records in my name, with access to your identification and signatures? Not long. Dominic had everything: tax records, passports, banking information, my passwords, perhaps. She stared at the notice. He prepared to divorce me. Cole said nothing. Victoria continued. The lawyers, Bianca, the Gala. It was not impulsive. No, he wanted me angry. Yes, he wanted me to call you. Cole's eyes narrowed. Why? Because now they can call it conspiracy. The realization passed between them. Victoria looked toward the leather case. You arrived carrying the Blackwood files. We entered together. I announced control. You stood beside me while I threatened Dominic with evidence. Cole's expression hardened. They want both of us. Or they want me to believe you are the reason this happened. Would that work? Victoria met his eyes. No. The answer came without hesitation. Something in Cole's face eased, but only slightly. At 10, Dominic sent a message. Ashcroft rooftop, 1 hour. Come alone or everything goes to federal prosecutors. Victoria showed Cole. No, he said. He knows what was prepared. He helped prepare it. Then he can explain why. He will not explain. He will bargain. Good. Cole reached for the phone. Victoria pulled it away. I am going. You are not. You do not give me orders. When someone invites you to an isolated rooftop while federal agents are building a case against you, common sense gives the order. He wants something. He wants you frightened. He already has that. Cole's expression shifted. Victoria rarely admitted fear. She continued. If he wanted me arrested immediately, the evidence would already be with prosecutors. He gave me a choice because there is something he cannot do without me. Cole looked at the message again. You will not go alone. He specifically said alone. He expects me to ignore that. Victoria stood, then stay out of sight. Cole stared at her for a long moment. You are asking me to trust a plan you have not explained. I do not have one. That is not reassuring, it is honest. He looked toward the windows, then back at her. 20 feet. Would I stay within 20 feet of you? He will see you. Then 15. Cole, 50 feet. Final offer. Despite everything, a breath of laughter escaped her. He did not smile. 1 hour, Victoria said. They left through the building's private garage. Victoria wore a black coat over the gown from the night before. She had removed the diamonds, but fastened the Blackwood emerald around her throat again. Cole noticed. Why wear that Dominic hates what it represents? He may want it. He has wanted everything else. The drive to the Ashcroft passed in silence. Morning traffic filled downtown Chicago. Pedestrians moved beneath umbrellas. News vans remained parked outside the hotel, though the gala had ended hours earlier. Cole entered through the loading entrance. Victoria used the main lobby. Photographers recognized her immediately. Questions followed her across the marble. Did she forge the documents? Was she under federal investigation? Had her marriage ended? Was Cole Mercer involved? Victoria did not answer. She entered the private elevator and pressed the rooftop level. When the doors opened, wind tore at her coat. Dominic stood near the edge of the roof. The city stretched behind him in pale gray light. He wore the same tuxedo trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His jacket was gone. A clean bandage covered his right palm. He looked tired, human almost. Victoria stepped onto the roof. The elevator doors closed behind her. You brought the necklace, he said. You brought the federal government. Dominic looked toward the skyline. I warned you that you did not understand the documents. You arranged for me to misunderstand them. I arranged for you to reveal what you would do if you believed you had power. Victoria stopped several feet away. You wanted a performance. I wanted certainty. About what, whether 7 years with me had made you weak. The wind pulled a strand of hair across her face. Victoria did not move it. You divorced me to test my strength. I ended a marriage that had become a grave. You brought Bianca to humiliate me. I brought Bianca because you needed to see yourself replaced. Victoria stared at him. His calm was unbearable. You think cruelty becomes noble when you call it strategy. I think you would still be sitting in that penthouse if I had asked you politely to remember who you were. You do not get to take credit for what you destroyed. Dominic turned toward her. I knew about the trust before our wedding. The words stopped her. He continued. Arthur showed me the structure himself. Victoria's breath became shallow. My father told you he chose me. For what? To expand the Blackwood assets into legitimate markets, real estate, hospitality, construction, infrastructure, and marry his daughter. That came later. Did it? Dominic looked at her. For the first time, something uncertain entered his face. I loved you. Victoria felt the pain before she could stop it. Past tense. For the first 3 years, I loved you more than anything I owned. I was never something you owned. That was the problem. The words hung between them. Dominic moved closer. You wanted an ordinary marriage. You wanted dinners, music weekends away, children who never knew what our names meant. I wanted that, too. No, you wanted me to want it. I watched you bury every part of yourself that frightened you. You encouraged me at first. You covered my piano. You stopped playing before I covered it. You moved my books. You stopped reading them. You isolated me from everyone I knew. You asked for distance from your father's world. Victoria shook her head. You are rewriting my life to make yourself innocent. I am not innocent. Dominic's voice hardened. I am telling you that I watched Victoria Blackwood disappear, and I hated the woman who remained almost as much as I hated myself for needing her quiet. Her hand closed around the edge of her coat. So you chose Bianca. I chose the one thing that would wound your pride deeply enough to wake it. Victoria stepped toward him. You did not wake me. You betrayed me. Yes. The answer came without apology. She looked at his face and understood that part of him believed every word. He had built a philosophy around his cruelty because the simpler truth was too ugly. He wanted her powerful only if her power still served him. What do you want? She asked. Dominic reached into a leather folder resting on a nearby table. He removed a set of documents. Sign these. Victoria did not take them. What are they? A transfer of your remaining beneficial rights in the Blackwood Trust. She laughed softly. There it is. In return, I withdraw my cooperation with the investigation. Malcolm filed the petition. With evidence I provided. You forged transfers in my name. I prepared records. You manufactured a federal crime. I created leverage. Victoria looked at the signature line. And Cole untouched. What happens to me? You leave Chicago. You receive $20 million through a private settlement. You live wherever you want. Comfortable. Dominic's mouth tightened. Yes. You still think that is enough. I think prison will be less comfortable. Victoria looked toward the city. How much of the trust do you control? Dominic said nothing. She faced him again. If you controlled enough, you would not need my signature. His expression remained calm, but she saw the answer in his eyes. You need me. I need the transfer to avoid years of litigation. No, you need my consent because my father built something you cannot reach. Dominic stepped closer. Your father built a machine no one fully controls, not even Malcolm no. Then why partner with him? Because he knows where the doors are. And I am the key. Dominic held out the pen. You are the blood beneficiary. Victoria looked at it. Do you remember asking me to marry you? Yes, you took me to the lake in winter. It was so cold I could not feel my hands. You said yes before I finished. I thought you were nervous. I was. The admission surprised her. Dominic looked at the documents. Sign them. No. His face became still. Victoria. No, you are not listening. For 7 years, listening was all I did. Dominic removed his phone. He pressed the screen. Victoria's own voice played through the speaker. I am only taking what is mine. Then another recording. The board will vote. Then another. The evidence remains private. The sentences had been cut together. Her voice continued. I control the trust. I will move the assets. Cole has the files. Victoria stared at the phone. I never said that. Not in that order. You edited it. It sounds convincing. You expect prosecutors to believe this. They will believe the financial records. The audio will give them motive. Dominic stopped the recording. Sign. Victoria looked toward the rooftop door. Cole was somewhere below, waiting, watching. She had agreed to meet Dominic because she believed his demand would reveal the weakness in his plan. It had. He needed her consent, but knowing his weakness did not remove the hand closing around her throat. You said you loved me for 3 years, she said. Dominic's eyes narrowed slightly. I did. What happened in the fourth, you stopped fighting me. Did that disappoint you? It frightened me. You wanted a wife who challenged you. I wanted you. No. Victoria stepped closer. You wanted the Blackwood name, the Blackwood money, and a woman powerful enough to make your victory feel earned. When I became quiet, you lost interest because there was nothing left to conquer. Dominic's jaw tightened. You think Mercer is different. He has never asked me to become smaller. He waited 7 years for my marriage to fail. He waited 7 years because I asked him to. Dominic's eyes darkened. That is the story he gave you. It is the truth. You do not know him. Victoria's voice softened. I know he remembers my mother's name. The rooftop door opened. Federal agents emerged in dark coats. The first held up a badge. Victoria Kane, do not move. Dominic stepped away from her. Victoria looked at him. You called them. I gave you a choice, no? You gave yourself a witness. 2 agents approached. Cole appeared behind them, restrained by another pair of officers near the door. His face was calm, but rage burned beneath it. Victoria, he said. She looked at his hands. No cuffs. Not yet. The lead agent spoke. Victoria Kane, you are under arrest on suspicion of conspiracy to commit financial fraud, attempted embezzlement, obstruction, and unlawful transfer of trust assets. Victoria felt the first cuff close around her wrist. Cole shifted forward. 3 agents turned toward him. Do not, Victoria said. He stopped. The second cuff closed. Metal against bone. Dominic stood several feet away with the unsigned documents in his hand. Victoria looked at him. Why destroy me completely? His expression did not change. Because Blackwoods only remember who they are after they lose everything. The agents led her toward the rooftop door. Cole's eyes remained on hers. He looked ready to tear the building apart. Victoria shook her head once. Not here, not now. The elevator carried her down through the hotel. At the lobby level, the doors opened onto a wall of cameras. Reporters surged forward behind security barriers. Someone had warned them. Flashes exploded across the marble. Questions struck from every direction. Did she steal from the Blackwood Trust? Was Cole Mercer her accomplice? Had she fabricated the ownership claim? Was Dominic Kane cooperating with federal authorities? Victoria walked between 2 agents with her wrists bound in front of her. Only hours earlier, the same lobby had watched her enter wearing the Blackwood emerald beside the most feared man in Chicago. Now they watched her leave in handcuffs. Outside, rain had started again. The agents guided her into a black federal vehicle. Through the window, Victoria saw Dominic beneath the hotel awning. He did not approach. He did not smile. He simply watched as the door closed between them. The vehicle pulled away from the Ashcroft. Victoria lowered her eyes to the cuffs. Her reflection trembled in the rain-covered glass. She had entered the Gala believing the truth would set her free. Now every truth she had spoken had been rearranged into evidence against her. By the time the federal building appeared ahead, Victoria had stopped asking whether Dominic had planned her fall. She had begun asking why he still needed her signature. The federal building rose from the wet Chicago street like a sealed block of gray stone. Victoria watched it through the rain-covered window as the vehicle turned beneath the security gate. The cuffs pressed into her wrists each time the car slowed. Across from her, an agent studied a folder without meeting her eyes. Cole was not in the vehicle. That frightened her more than the arrest. At the Ashcroft, he had been surrounded by agents but not restrained. She had stopped him before anger turned a financial investigation into bloodshed. She did not know whether they had released him, questioned him, or taken him through another entrance. The garage door closed behind the car. Sound disappeared. The agents led Victoria through a concrete corridor past locked doors and cameras mounted behind dark glass. Her heels clicked against the floor. The Blackwood emerald remained at her throat, cold against her skin. No one had asked her to remove it. Not yet. At the processing desk, an officer took her name, fingerprints, jewelry, and personal belongings. When he reached for the necklace, Victoria covered the emerald with one hand. It belonged to my mother. The officer looked at her. It goes into evidence storage with everything else. It has nothing to do with the case. That is not my decision. For a moment, neither moved. Then Victoria unfastened the clasp herself. The necklace rested in her palm like a dark green eye. She placed it inside the clear evidence bag. Without it, The skin at her throat felt bare. The officer sealed the bag and wrote her name across the label. Victoria Kane. She stared at it. Not Blackwood. Not yet. She was taken to an interrogation room with a steel table, 4 chairs, and one narrow window too high to see through. The walls were painted the color of old paper. A camera blinked in the corner. Her cuffs were removed. The agents left. Victoria sat alone. Time moved differently in that room. There were no clocks, no city noise, no rain against windows, only the hum of fluorescent lights and the slow ache returning to her wrists. She placed both hands on the table. Dominic still needed her signature. That fact mattered. She repeated it silently until fear stopped swallowing every other thought. He had the trustees. He had Malcolm. He had forged financial records and edited recordings. He had federal attention. If he already controlled the trust, he would have let the case crush her. Instead, he had offered $20 million and freedom in exchange for her beneficial rights. He needed consent, or something that looked like consent. The door opened. A woman entered carrying 2 folders and a paper cup of coffee. She appeared to be in her early 40s. Dark hair, charcoal suit, no jewelry except a plain watch. Her expression held neither hostility nor sympathy. She sat across from Victoria and placed one folder between them. Assistant United States Attorney Rebecca Monroe. Victoria looked at the folder. I want my attorney. He has been contacted. Then we can wait. Rebecca opened the second folder. You may. She took a sip of coffee. But you should understand what is waiting with us. Victoria leaned back. Rebecca arranged several documents across the table. Bank transfers, corporate authorizations, emails, copies of trust resolutions. Each page carried Victoria's name. Some carried her signature. One showed a transfer of $42 million from a trust subsidiary into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Another authorized a payment to a consulting firm linked to Cole. Victoria read every line. The documents were clean. Too clean. This is not mine, she said. Rebecca watched her. The account is registered through a holding company connected to your Social Security number. I did not open it. The transfer authorization contains your signature. It is forged. The authentication certificate says otherwise. Victoria turned the page. An email appeared beneath the transfer record, from her private address, to an account assigned to Cole. We move before Dominic sees the structure. Once the board is pressured, the trust becomes ours. Victoria looked up. I did not write this. Rebecca said nothing. The language is wrong. How I do not use the phrase, the trust becomes ours. Why not? Because it is not ours. Rebecca's eyes sharpened. What is it, my father's trust, my inheritance, a legal structure I did not fully understand until last night? You claimed direct control in front of witnesses. I claimed what I had been led to believe was mine. By whom, Malcolm Shaw? Mr. Shaw says he corrected your misunderstanding before the gala. Victoria almost laughed. He raised a glass to me. That is not legal advice. He confirmed the Blackwood ownership in front of the entire ballroom. He confirmed that the trust held an interest in Kane Consolidated. He did not confirm that you personally controlled it. The distinction sounded rehearsed. Victoria looked at the documents again. Dominic gave you these. Rebecca folded her hands. Mr. Kane has agreed to cooperate. Of course he has. He says he discovered irregular transfers several weeks ago. He created them. He says you contacted Cole Mercer after learning your marriage was ending and planned to seize trust assets before the divorce became public. Victoria looked toward the camera in the corner. Every word mattered. Where is Cole? Rebecca did not answer. Has he been arrested? We are discussing you. No. You are showing me papers designed to make us look like conspirators. I am asking whether you arrested the man you claim helped me. Rebecca held her gaze. He was questioned and released. Relief came quickly. Victoria hid it. Why, we did not have grounds to hold him, but you had grounds to hold me. We have accounts and your name signatures linked to your identity emails sent from your devices and public statements that appear consistent with the financial activity. Appear. Rebecca leaned forward. Mrs. Kane, I am not asking you to confess to something you did not do. Then what are you asking? I am asking why the evidence points in one direction while every instinct I have says someone worked very hard to make it point there. The room changed, only slightly, but Victoria felt it. Rebecca was not offering trust. She was offering uncertainty. Victoria looked at the email again. The timestamp showed it had been sent 11 months earlier at 2:14 in the morning. Can you verify where this email originated? We are working on it. I was in Boston that night. Rebecca glanced at the page. How do you know? My mother's sister died 11 months ago. The funeral was in Boston. I stayed at the Harcourt Hotel. Were you alone? No. Dominic attended the service and left before dinner. Rebecca wrote something. Victoria continued. The hotel will have records, cameras, room access logs. If the email came from your device, location alone may not help. It did not come from my device. You are certain? Yes. Did Dominic know your passwords? Yes. Did Cole know Rebecca studied her? Did Mr. Mercer have access to Blackwood financial records? He had access to my father's archive. Then he had motive and means. Cole had 7 years to steal from that trust. Perhaps he waited for you. Victoria felt anger rise. You know nothing about him. I know he served Arthur Blackwood. Rebecca closed one folder. I know he was investigated in connection with 3 unexplained disappearances and never charged. I know several men who testified against your father later recanted. I know Mr. Mercer has maintained private security contacts across the country, and none of that proves fraud. No, then stop using his reputation to make Dominic's lies sound credible. Rebecca's expression did not change. Dominic Kane has no reputation for loyalty. The sentence landed with unexpected force. Rebecca continued. That does not make you innocent. It makes everyone involved dangerous. Victoria looked down at her bare hands. Then follow the money. We are, not the money placed in my name. Follow who created the accounts, who purchased the authorization certificates, who accessed the trust records, who benefits if I sign away my rights. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Sign away your rights. Victoria realized she had said too much. The rooftop conversation had not been recorded by federal agents unless Dominic had arranged it. Perhaps he had. Perhaps this was another room where silence mattered more than outrage. Rebecca waited. Victoria chose each word carefully. Dominic offered to help end the investigation if I surrendered my beneficial interest. When this morning? Where on the Ashcroft rooftop? What exactly did he say? Victoria looked toward the camera again. My attorney should be present. Rebecca sat back. Then we wait. They waited almost 2 hours. Robert Hayes arrived looking older than he had the previous day. His tie was crooked. Rain darkened the shoulders of his coat. He entered the room with a leather briefcase and anger hidden beneath professional calm. You should not have spoken without me. I asked for you. Robert looked at Rebecca. She is done answering questions. Rebecca closed her folders. That is her right. She stood, then looked at Victoria. You may be charged today. You may also be released pending review. That decision depends on evidence neither of us controls. Victoria watched her reach the door. Dominic still needs my signature. Rebecca stopped. Robert turned sharply toward Victoria. Rebecca faced her again. Do you have proof, Noma? Then find some. She left. Robert sat down. What signature? Victoria told him everything that had happened on the rooftop. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he removed his glasses and pressed 2 fingers against his eyes. He admitted manufacturing records. He called it preparation. Did anyone hear him? I do not know. Was Cole close enough? No. Did Dominic record the conversation? Probably. Then he controls the version that exists. Victoria stared at the metal table. Robert opened his briefcase. The federal complaint may remain sealed for several hours. Rebecca Monroe has not committed to filing charges. Why she doubts the evidence. Can she prove it is false? Not yet. Then I may still go to prison? Yes. Robert did not soften it. Victoria appreciated that. Where is Cole? He is outside the building. Her head lifted. He refused to leave. A small ache moved through her chest. Robert continued. He has also hired 3 attorneys, contacted 2 forensic accountants, and threatened to expose everyone involved. That sounds like him. He wants me to file an emergency petition against the trustees. Can we not, while the evidence suggests you attempted to steal from the trust? Victoria leaned back. For the first time since the arrest, exhaustion entered her bones. Robert gathered the documents. They will move you to a holding room while the prosecutor decides. The holding room had no window. A narrow bench ran along one wall. The air smelled of disinfectant and old fear. Victoria sat alone. Without the emerald, the gown, the penthouse, or Cole beside her, there was nothing left to perform. She closed her eyes. Her father's voice returned. Not from the funeral. From a winter afternoon when she was 14. Arthur sat across from her in the library at the Blackwood estate. A chessboard rested between them. Victoria had attacked early, taking a bishop and 2 pawns before losing her queen. She had pushed the board away. Arthur reset the pieces. Anyone can attack the king, he said. He cheated. Kings always cheat when frightened. Then what is the point of the rules? The rules show you where the cheating happened. Victoria opened her eyes. The holding room returned. Dominic needed her signature. Why not for money alone? He controlled companies, politicians, banks, and trustees. $20 million was nothing to him. The trust held far more than Kane consolidated. If he wanted the beneficial rights, there had to be authority attached to them, something Malcolm could not exercise, something Dominic could not forge without risk. Victoria stood and began walking the length of the room. Arthur had built the trust in layers: economic rights, voting authority, trustee discretion, contingent authority, blood beneficiary. Dominic had called her the key, not an obstacle. A key. She stopped. He could forge transfers in her name, but he could not fully transfer her beneficial interest without consent. If he killed her, the rights might pass elsewhere or activate another clause. If she were convicted trustee, control might expand, but Dominic still would not own the inheritance. He needed her alive, frightened, and willing to sign. That meant the case was not the final weapon. It was pressure. Victoria sat again and looked at the camera above the door. Kings always cheat when frightened, she whispered. Across the city, Cole Mercer turned an abandoned shipping office into a war room. The building stood near the river, hidden between warehouses that had belonged to Blackwood companies for decades. Most of the windows were painted black. Rust covered the loading doors. Inside, monitors glowed across folding tables. Lena Brooks sat before 3 laptops, dark curls tied behind her head. She had designed security systems for banks, casinos, and political campaigns before Arthur Blackwood hired her to protect his private networks. Daniel Price appeared on a video screen from New York. Mac Bell, an old union organizer with a broken nose and thick hands, sorted property records into piles. Naomi Grant stood near the wall reading the federal complaint from her phone. As an investigative journalist, she had spent 5 years tracing Dominic's political influence. 2 editors had killed her stories. 1 source had disappeared. Cole placed both hands on the table. Find out why Dominic needs her alive and consenting. Daniel adjusted his glasses on the screen. We do not know that he does. He offered her money for a signature. Under pressure, yes. Then the signature may be challenged later, not if it appears voluntary and comes with legal counsel. Mac looked up. Dominic controls lawyers. He controls some, Daniel said. Not the entire legal system. Naomi gave him a dry look. In Chicago, that distinction becomes philosophical. Lena tapped her keyboard. I have the offshore account records. Cole moved beside her. Where were they created? Registration was filed through a corporate service in Georgetown. The authentication certificate traces to a private vendor in Delaware. Who purchased it? Working on it. She enlarged the transfer document. The metadata is wrong. Daniel leaned toward his camera. How the document says it was signed 11 months ago, but the certificate template was updated 6 months ago. Silence fell across the room. Cole stared at the screen. Can you prove that the vendor keeps template histories? I need access. Get it. Lena looked at him. Legally, Cole did not blink. Naomi answered for him. Get it in a way a prosecutor can use. Lena turned back to the keyboard. Mac opened another file. The trust archive lists storage accounts in 3 cities, New York, Boston, and Chicago. Daniel frowned. Arthur separated amendments from operating schedules. Why? Because he trusted paper more than people. Cole looked at the property list. Where in Chicago? Mac slid a document across the table. An old safety deposit facility beneath Blackwood Mutual. The bank closed 9 years ago. The vault belongs to a holding company Malcolm controls. Cole reached for his coat. Daniel's voice stopped him. If you break into that vault, anything you find becomes useless. Cole looked at the screen. Then how do we enter? Daniel thought for a moment. Arthur granted access to 3 people. Malcolm Shaw, Arthur himself, the sole blood beneficiary. Cole's jaw tightened. Victoria is in federal custody. Then we need the prosecutor. Rebecca Monroe met Cole in the parking garage beneath the Federal Building. She arrived alone. Cole waited beside a black sedan. "You asked for 10 minutes," she said. "I need Victoria released." "That is not how this works." "You know the evidence is manufactured. I suspect it." Lena Brooks found a certificate dated 6 months after the alleged transfer. Rebecca's expression sharpened. "Do you have the vendor record?" "Not yet." "Then you have an observation. We also found metadata linked to a Kane consolidated server. Admissible, not yet." Rebecca crossed her arms. "Mr. Mercer's suspicion may keep me from rushing a charge. It does not allow me to release a suspect into an active conspiracy." Cole stepped closer. "Dominic wants her signature, she told me. He cannot control the trust without it. Can you prove that?" "Not without Victoria." Rebecca studied him. "You expect me to release her so she can access an archive controlled by another subject in the investigation?" "Yes. You understand how insane that sounds." "Yes. Good." She started toward the elevator. Cole spoke behind her. "If you charge her today, Dominic wins." Rebecca stopped. "If I release her, and she disappears, he wins too. She will not disappear." "You sound certain." Cole held her gaze. "I have spent 7 years watching her refuse every easy escape." Rebecca was silent. Then she said, "Bring me something I can put in front of a judge." Cole returned to the war room. For 6 hours the team worked without stopping. Lena obtained the vendor's public template archive and verified that the certificate attached to Victoria's transfer did not exist on the date shown. Naomi located a former Kane Consolidated employee who remembered Charles Bennett ordering a private data backup from Victoria's home office. Mac found building access logs placing Malcolm at the closed Blackwood bank 3 nights before the gala. Daniel uncovered a reference to a sealed codicil filed under an old estate case in Cook County. The codicil did not contain the trust schedule. It contained instructions. If any 2 trustees attempted to transfer controlling assets to a 3rd trustee while under criminal investigation, all trustee authority would be suspended. Temporary control would pass to the sole blood beneficiary until an independent review was completed. Victoria. Cole read the clause twice. "Does Dominic know?" Daniel shook his head. "If he knew, he would not create evidence tying Malcolm to fraud, unless he thinks he can obtain Victoria's rights before the clause activates." Naomi looked toward Cole. "That is why he needs the signature." Daniel nodded. "Once she transfers her beneficial position, she may no longer qualify as the sole blood beneficiary with standing to take temporary control." Cole picked up the evidence file. "We have enough." Rebecca reviewed the material shortly before midnight. She read the certificate history, the server metadata, the vault access logs, the codicil. When she finished, she closed the folder. "This proves the transfer evidence may be false. It does not prove Dominic created it. Give us 48 hours, Cole said. For what to make him say it?" Rebecca looked toward the observation window. Victoria sat in the next room beside Robert Hayes. Her hair had fallen loose around her shoulders. The black gown was wrinkled from hours in custody, but her posture remained straight. "She is not trained for an operation," Rebecca said. Cole's gaze stayed on Victoria. She was raised inside one. Rebecca entered the room. Victoria looked up. The prosecutor placed the codicil on the table. "Your father left a contingency," Victoria read it. Her eyes moved slowly across the page. When she reached the final clause, her hands became still. "He knew the trustees might turn on me. He knew someone might." Victoria looked at Robert. "Can this give me control temporarily if conspiracy is proven?" Rebecca sat across from her. "We have evidence that the financial case was manufactured. Not enough to charge Dominic or Malcolm." Victoria closed the codicil. "Release me, under conditions." "I will agree. You do not know them yet." "I know Dominic needs my signature." Rebecca leaned forward. "You will wear a recording device. You will remain under federal supervision. You will not move money or contact the press. You will not deviate from the operation." Victoria met her eyes. "And Cole, he remains under observation. He works with me. He follows my instructions." Victoria almost smiled. "You may have difficulty with that." Rebecca did not. 48 hours, I only need 1 meeting." At 1 in the morning, Victoria walked into the federal parking garage. Cole waited beneath the fluorescent lights. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he crossed the distance between them. His arms closed around her. Victoria pressed her face against his chest and held the back of his coat. The embrace was not gentle. It carried every hour of fear neither had been able to admit. Cole lowered his face to her hair. "You were supposed to let Robert handle it. You were supposed to leave." "I did not. I know." He pulled back enough to see her face. A bruise darkened one wrist where the cuff had tightened. Cole touched the skin with his thumb. His expression went cold. Victoria covered his hand. "Not now. They hurt you. They processed me. They put chains on you for crimes Dominic committed, and we are going to prove it." Cole looked into her eyes. "You do not have to do this alone. I know. Do you?" Victoria stood on her toes and kissed him. The kiss was brief, but nothing about it was uncertain. Cole froze for half a second. Then his hand moved to the back of her neck. When they separated, his forehead rested against hers. "This is a terrible place for that," he said. Victoria looked around the concrete garage. "I have had worse evenings." His mouth almost formed a smile. Rebecca appeared beside the elevator. "Enjoy the reunion later." Victoria stepped away from Cole. Rebecca handed her a sealed evidence bag. Inside lay the Blackwood emerald. "We removed the necklace from standard storage." Victoria opened the bag and lifted it into her palm. "Why we may need it." Dominic answered Victoria's call on the first ring. "I will sign," she said. Silence. Then his voice. "Where are you? Does it matter you were released? You sound disappointed. I expected reason to prevail. You expected fear." Dominic lowered his voice. "Perhaps they are the same thing. I want the 20 million transferred before I sign. You are negotiating from a weak position. I am still the only person who can give you what you want." Another silence. Then he named the location. The Blackwood Crown Casino stood abandoned outside Chicago near a stretch of forest and frozen marshland. Arthur had built it before legal disputes forced the property to close. Dominic chose it because no public cameras remained and the nearest road carried little traffic after dark. Victoria wore the Blackwood necklace beneath a black blouse. Rebecca's technicians secured a wire beneath the fabric. A second device rested inside the emerald setting. Dominic would search her. He would find the wire if he wanted to. The necklace was older than every surveillance method he understood. Cole watched the technician close the final clasp. "You stay close to the east wall," he said. "The casino has a service corridor behind the old kitchens. I remember. You were there before my father brought me once when I was 16. Why he wanted me to understand why beautiful rooms fail." Cole studied her. "What did he say? That foundations matter more than chandeliers?" Victoria looked at the emerald. He was rarely subtle. Rebecca entered the room. "Dominic may have private security. Malcolm may attend. We need clear admissions. And if they search me, let them find the primary wire." Cole turned toward Rebecca. "No, it makes the second device more credible. It makes her unprotected." Victoria looked at him. "I will still have the necklace. A recording does not stop a bullet." "No." She fastened the emerald at her throat. "But it can stop the man holding the gun from owning everything afterward." The casino appeared beyond the trees at 11:30. Its gold sign had gone dark years earlier. Cracked statues lined the entrance. Dead leaves moved across the empty parking lot. Victoria exited the car alone. Federal vehicles waited beyond the tree line. Cole entered through the service road. Inside, emergency lamps lit the casino floor. Dust covered the gaming tables. Torn velvet curtains hung from the ceiling. Rows of slot machines stood silent beneath dead chandeliers. Dominic waited near the central roulette table. Malcolm Shaw stood beside him. Two armed men remained near the doors. Dominic's gaze moved over Victoria. "You came alone. You knew I would not." One guard searched her. He found the wire beneath her blouse and placed it on the roulette table. Dominic looked at the device. "Federal custody has made you predictable." Victoria removed her coat. "Marriage did that first." Malcolm watched her with the same grandfatherly expression he had worn at the gala. "You have caused considerable damage." Victoria looked at him. "You told me my father would be proud." "He would be. Of what?" "That you finally became useful." Dominic placed the transfer documents on the table. "Sign." Victoria did not reach for the pen. "I want the truth. You want freedom. I want to know why Malcolm betrayed my father." Malcolm sighed. "Arthur betrayed all of us." How he promised Dominic the future of the Blackwood Empire. He promised me control of the trust. He promised you a life free from both. Victoria looked between them. He built competing promises. He built safeguards, Dominic said. Malcolm smiled without warmth. He built suspicion. Victoria turned toward him. You moved the offshore money, I moved numbers. You forged my signature. I preserved the trust from an emotional beneficiary. You framed me. You framed yourself the moment you entered that ballroom and confused inheritance with authority. Victoria held his gaze. You needed me angry. We needed you visible. Dominic's jaw tightened. We agreed she would sign, not that you would lecture her. Malcolm looked at him. You are still sentimental. Victoria watched them. The alliance between the two men was not stable. Dominic wanted control. Malcolm wanted ownership. Neither trusted the other. She stepped toward the table. Was Bianca part of it? Dominic answered. No. The divorce, yes. The gala, yes. The humiliation. Dominic looked at her. I needed you to act. Malcolm laughed softly. He needed you gone before you examined the trust. Do not let him turn greed into romance. Dominic's face hardened. Enough. Victoria looked at him. So the rooftop story was another lie, not all of it. You did not betray me to wake me. Dominic said nothing. Malcolm answered for him. He betrayed you because you became inconvenient. The truth entered more cleanly than pain. Victoria looked at Dominic and saw something almost human in his expression. Regret. Not for hurting her, for being understood. You loved me, she said. Yes, but never more than power. Dominic's voice lowered. No. Victoria nodded. At last, one honest answer. Malcolm moved toward the table. Sign the papers. Victoria touched the pen. How much do you receive enough? How much does Dominic receive? Malcolm glanced at him. That is no longer relevant. Dominic turned. What does that mean? The armed men near the doors raised their weapons. Dominic went still. Malcolm stepped away from the roulette table. It means your usefulness has ended. The casino lights cut out. Red emergency lamps ignited along the floor. A low electronic hiss came from Victoria's necklace. The signal had been jammed. Outside, federal monitors went dark. Cole heard only static through his earpiece. Inside the casino, more men emerged from behind the silent gaming tables. Malcolm's voice moved through the red darkness. Victoria will die during an attempt to escape federal custody. Dominic will die trying to protect his wife. Cole Mercer will be blamed for both. Victoria stepped back from the table. Dominic reached beneath his jacket. A gunshot shattered the silence. Glass exploded above them. Victoria dropped behind the roulette table as bullets tore through the abandoned casino. Glass exploded above them. Victoria pressed herself against the roulette table as bullets tore through velvet wood and brass. Red emergency lights flashed across the casino floor, turning every shadow into a moving threat. Dominic fired twice from behind a marble column. One of Malcolm's men fell. Move, Dominic shouted. Victoria crawled toward the old cashier station. She remembered the casino from childhood. Her father had once shown her a service passage hidden behind the vault wall. The entrance was less than 30 feet away. Cole's voice echoed from the eastern corridor. Victoria. Gunfire answered him. Malcolm's men had divided the casino, forcing Cole away from the main floor. Outside, federal agents remained blind. The signal jammer blocked every transmission. Victoria reached the cashier station and pulled open a cabinet beneath the counter. Her fingers found an old brass switch. She turned it. A narrow section of wall opened. Dominic stared at her. You knew that was there. My father built this place. She entered the passage. Dominic followed. The corridor smelled of dust and cold stone. Old electrical cables ran along the ceiling. Victoria moved through darkness until she reached the surveillance room. Most of the equipment was dead. One monitor flickered when she pressed the emergency power switch. A grainy image of the casino floor appeared. Malcolm stood near the roulette table directing his men through the casino radio network. Victoria found the control microphone. Dominic watched her. What are you doing changing the board? She pressed the transmission button. Team 2 Mercer is moving toward the north entrance. Cut him off. Her voice was calm enough to sound like Malcolm's command operator. 2 gunmen changed direction on the monitor. Victoria locked the fire door behind them. She sent another group toward the abandoned kitchen. then lowered the steel security gate across the corridor. One by one, Malcolm's men became trapped inside sections of the building. Dominic looked at her as if he had never seen her before. Victoria turned toward him. "This is the woman you wanted me to become." His face tightened. "No." She stepped past him. "This is the woman you were never able to control." A burst of gunfire sounded outside the room. Cole appeared in the corridor, blood running from a cut above his eyebrow. His gaze found Victoria first. "You hurt, no?" He looked at Dominic. "Unfortunately, neither is he." Dominic almost smiled. The moment ended when Malcolm's voice came through the speakers. "You cannot hide forever, Victoria." She pressed the microphone. "I am not hiding." Victoria opened the final security door. The three of them entered the main vault chamber. Malcolm waited beside the central safe with 2 remaining guards. He held a pistol against the leather transfer folder. "Sign the documents," he said, "and I may allow Mercer to leave alive." Cole raised his weapon. Malcolm's guard aimed at Victoria. Dominic stood between them. For one suspended moment, no one moved. Malcolm looked at Dominic. "You know how this ends. Kill her, and we divide the trust." Dominic slowly raised his pistol. The barrel pointed toward Victoria. Cole shifted, but Victoria lifted one hand. She kept her eyes on Dominic. 7 years of marriage stood between them. Every dinner eaten in silence, every promise rewritten, every lie dressed as protection. Dominic's finger tightened against the trigger. Then he turned and shot Malcolm's guard. The second guard fired. Dominic stepped in front of Victoria. The bullet struck his side. Cole fired once. The guard collapsed. Malcolm dropped his weapon as federal agents stormed through the casino entrances. Victoria's restored surveillance feed had allowed them to follow the internal security system. Cole forced Malcolm to the floor. Rebecca Monroe entered behind the tactical team. "The necklace," Victoria said. She touched the Blackwood emerald. It recorded everything. Malcolm's face emptied of color. Dominic lay against the vault wall, one hand pressed to his wound. Victoria knelt beside him. His breathing was shallow. "Did you ever love me?" he asked. She looked at the man she had once trusted with every quiet part of herself. "Yes." His eyes closed briefly. Was it enough? No. The word was gentle, final. Dominic reached inside his shirt and removed a small key card. "The original trust ledger is behind the east vault panel." Victoria took it. "The encryption code is your mother's birthday." Why tell me he looked at the wedding ring on her hand? Because I spent 7 years trying to own something that could only be given. Victoria removed the ring. She placed it beside him. "I hope you survive." A weak smile touched his face. "That is colder than wishing me dead." "No." She stood. "It means you have to live with losing." The Emerald recording captured Malcolm admitting to the forged transfers, the false accounts, and the plan to murder Victoria and Dominic. The restored casino cameras recorded the armed ambush. Within weeks, the federal case against Victoria collapsed. Malcolm was charged with fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, and trust manipulation. Dominic survived, but his cooperation could not erase the crimes he had committed. The Blackwood contingency clause activated. Trustee authority was suspended. Control passed to Victoria. She dismantled the criminal accounts, protected employee pensions, exposed the bribery network, and separated the legitimate businesses from the empire Dominic had built around them. Months later, Victoria returned to the Founders Circle Gala. This time she entered alone. No husband guided her. No family name introduced her. The room moved aside because she had finally learned how to occupy it. Cole waited on the balcony. Chicago glowed beneath them. He reached toward her hand, then stopped. Victoria closed the distance herself. She placed her fingers in his. "What happens now?" Cole asked. Victoria looked through the glass at the men who once ignored her. "Now I build a life that does not require me to disappear. And me, you do not walk in front of me. I never wanted to. You do not walk behind me. I can accept that." Victoria stepped closer. "You walk beside me," Cole smiled. "That is where I have always wanted to be." They returned to the ballroom together. Above the fireplace hung a portrait of Arthur Blackwood. Victoria looked at it once. Then she kept walking.